In the variety streamer community, bad video game opinions are considered especially heinous. In the graveyard, the dedicated streamer who gives these wretched takes is known only as Kyria Thanatos. All opinions in this broadcast belong solely to the streamer. This is Post-Mortem.
Hey everybody, welcome to another Post-Mortem. My name's Kyria Thanatos, and if you don't know, this is my show where I give my video game opinions and the thoughts on the things that I played this week. This week, I played Rule of Rose, Dead Rising, and Evil Tonight. Technically, I also played World of Horror, but I'm saving that until I'm done playing it for the month. It would really mean the world to me if you would like the video, subscribe to the channel, and if you have anything you'd like to say about my opinions or the games that I played, anything like that, feel free to leave a comment below. It really helps out. So with that out of the way, let's get to the first game we played this week, and that is Rule of Rose. Rule of Rose is a really interesting game, and it's really uncomfortable. It's almost uncomfortable, the game. It's really, really cool. It has a lot of really cool stuff. I just wish, as is a recurring theme this month, that it had not dropped the ball so hard in the ending. Granted, not as bad as some of the other stuff this month, but pretty bad. So, there's a lot of stuff that I really like about Rule of Rose, and I want to talk about it. I really, really, really like the dog mechanic. I like Brown. He's a really interesting character, because he functions as three things for you. He's companionship, which in a horror game, oh my god, do you need companionship? You're alone, you're terrified, you're scared. There's always going to be moments where you wish you had somebody with you, and Brown is there with you. He also functions as an attacking partner. He will often in combat grab the enemy and scare them off, or will bark at smaller enemies, which makes them sort of get stun locked for a moment so that you can hit them. But the most important thing and the most interesting thing that Brown does is function as a sort of nav guide, almost like in Dead Space, how Isaac can hold his hand out and a beam will come down from his hand that tells him which objective to go to. Brown is that. Almost every item in the game, Brown can search for it. He can sniff it and then find another item like it or another item related to it. Often with plot important items, this leads you either to the next puzzle, to the next character, to the next door, wherever you need to go in progression. But Brown can also find a number of unique items that only he can find. He can find healing items. He can find weapons. He can find unique parts to weapons that you can turn in and use to make a better weapon in a second playthrough. He can even find these little reels that are secrets that unlock more of the story and explain more of the story that you can watch. What the fuck? Film 8 out of 14? Excuse me? Only he can find them, and only in certain chapters too. It's a really interesting, really cool mechanic, and I've never seen a game do anything like that with somebody who is both functionally a companion, but also diegetically is a nav guide, is an objective marker for you. When you've played as many games as I have, you start to sort of get fatigued with objective markers to the point that I almost wish I could turn them off in a lot of games, but I can't, because then the game becomes unplayable without them. The little floating chevrons above stuff, they get really frustrating and really annoying and become sort of all-encompassing in game design. Seeing an objective marker that is a friend that I feel bad about, that I have to take care of his health, that I want to protect, is so much more interesting, even if the function is essentially the same. And that's not really where the good things about the game end. The music, the art, so much of the game artistically is incredible. The music sort of goes between these almost orchestrated performances where they're constantly showing off their brass skills to somber moments of intense quiet, or even sometimes no sound at all. And it always really punctuates the moment and makes it really interesting. And really the whole art of the game, the cutscenes, the concepts, everything is all really voyeuristic, which I think is really interesting because it lends again to this sense of uncomfortableness. The game isn't really about being a voyeur too much, but it does use this voyeurism that children often go through that to make you uncomfortable. Children have no qualms with staring at something that they don't understand and going, whoa, what's that? But as adults, we do. And you feel as though you are constantly being watched by the children, by the enemies, despite the fact that they have no eyes. Everything feels like it's always watching you. Even in the cutscenes, you feel like you're getting this very lurid peek into a world that's really uncomfortable.
I'm so sorry, but it's my turn. Don't think you have to hold back. Do it like this. And this. And this. And this. Oh, and this. And like this. And this.
What the fuck?
We're still friends, aren't we? I know we're still friends, don't I? Just
And I really like that about it. It's probably one of my favorite things about the game, which of course brings us to the gameplay. Not good. 0 out of 10. Maybe that's being a bit too mean. The combat is rudimentary. I was warned before going in that the controls were going to be really bad, but they're not any different than any other PS2 era standard survival horror game. It plays like every one of those. It's just that it's really unfun. The combat is so basic that there's almost no point to ever engage with it, and then the game forces you to engage with it in a myriad of ways anyway, whether it be sections that you're forced to fight a bunch of little guys. Yeah, this sure does feel like a forced combat section. Or boss fights with a guy whose arm I could only describe as a hitbox orb. My guy turns into a hitbox orb? He really does! Can you not hit him when he falls down? Nope. Nope, you can't. Look, watch. Hold on, let me make him fall down again. Yeah, no, look. The game constantly requires you and throws so many enemies at you that you're going to have to engage with the combat, and it's just not very fun. The puzzles, equally, are not very good. None of them are all that hard. None of them are all that confusing. I had to ask for my chat's help a few times. That was more about getting it done in a reasonable amount of time than it was about the difficulty of the puzzles. So really, ultimately, when the game has a very cool atmosphere and a very cool visual design, but doesn't have good gameplay, doesn't have good puzzles, and is a survival horror game, what are you left with? The answer is that you're left with a story. And the story is presented in a really cool way, but is otherwise not very good in my opinion. It touches on some really interesting subjects. I really like the gender fucky lesbian stuff that happens between the protagonist and the antagonist. I really enjoy the fact that the story is presented to you like it's a children's grim fairy tale unfolding around you. There's a lot of pop-ups that will say like, when the girl examined the bucket, it pleaded, "Lass, please put me back atop my body." Stuff like that makes the game feel like you're being told a grim fairy tale, in addition to the books that you get drawn by the children that are often depictions of grim fairy tales. But that's about the coolest thing that the story does. Unfortunately, it deals with some pretty heavy subjects and then tries to tell the story in this sort of Dark Souls-esque way. And I don't mean Dark Souls in the sense that it is all confusing and hard to parse. It's more that Dark Souls' creator has gone on record that the reason that Dark Souls' storytelling is so esoteric and jumbled and strange is because he read fairy tale and adventure books as a child that were in English and could only parse about half of the book, and thus had to make up the rest on his own, which led him to create and imagine fantastical worlds from half-truths that he could only understand from the book. That's a lot what Rule of Rose feels like, but that's not a compliment in this case, because the story it's trying to tell is deeply serious, and it doesn't hit as hard when you can't make it out. And it throws a twist in at the end that I really personally just can't suspend my disbelief for. So to spoiler a little, the main antagonist has convinced a drunk man with a dead son who kidnapped the protagonist out of a crashed blimp where her parents died. He kidnapped her and then convinced himself that she was his dead son and started calling her Joshua and making herself call herself Joshua. Eventually the protagonist escapes, goes to an orphanage, meets the antagonist who becomes the Queen of Roses. This antagonist later goes back to the man who kidnapped the protagonist, who is now drunk and miserable, and somehow convinces him to become a literal dog named Stray Dog, who is a fairy tale that she has used to control the other kids at the orphanage through fear. I just don't buy this. I can't believe that some little girl convinced a drunk man, who admittedly was very sad, to become a literal dog, like on all fours, barking and howling, and then used that dog, who is actually a man, to murder all the other inhabitants of an orphanage because she was jealous that the protagonist was giving too much attention to a real dog. I just don't buy it. I get the parallels it's trying to make. I understand that she went to go make her own dog while the protagonist was enamored with Brown, who is the dog that you spend the game with. I get the parallels there. I just can't buy it. It's too much of a leap of logic for me, and it breaks my suspension of disbelief entirely. But that's a lot of words to say I really did like the game. Even though I think its story is subpar and a lot of its gameplay is pretty bad, playing through it is an experience that I can really recommend if you can stomach survival horror that is kind of bad. It's a really interesting experience, and I don't think I've ever played another game like it. But as is a theme, I just wish it was better in the end. Now I'm gonna jump ahead a little bit and talk about Evil Tonight, because I didn't actually finish it, whereas I did finish Rule of Rose and Dead Rising. But I think Evil Tonight is really good. It has great art, has great music, good puzzles, good combat. It's just a good game. I really like the protagonist, Sylvia. She's incredibly confident, and it leads to a good bit of humor, but it also just makes her feel like this really fun protagonist to be. She's very quick to compliment herself or say how good and cool she is while she's saving all these people. As far as the story goes, I haven't finished it, so I don't actually know any of the big ending spoilers or anything like that, and I don't foresee myself finishing it anytime soon, so I'm just going to say now, pretty much all I can really say about it is that it's a little boring. It feels like it's just there to cover up the plot and to make it a plot, but I do really like, from a game design perspective, that every time you find a diary page which is feeding you slowly more and more of the backstory, they're always in order. It doesn't matter if you find a diary page in room A, then go to room B and find a diary page, and then you die. When you reload your save, if you go to room B and then back to room A, the story that you were fed will still be in the same order as it was before, which is really nice because I've been playing a lot of survival horror recently, and in a number of those, the notes can get sort of jumbled and mished together in a way that makes it really hard to parse the story because you're not seeing them in the order that they were always intended. It's a small change, but it's a really nice game design change that I wish more survival horror had. I really don't have that much to say about its puzzles or combat. It's just really good. It seems like there's going to be a difficulty spike at the end of it that I'm not looking forward to, but obviously I'll have more thoughts on it probably then. Overall though, from what I've played, I think the game is really good, and I think it's going to stay really good even with a difficulty spike. It's a solid recommendation for me. Which leads me into Dead Rising. I don't want to talk about this one. I mean, I do, but I don't, because this is such a childhood classic for so many people. But I'm gonna be honest, after having played through it, it feels like the bare bones of a good game that never actually totally coalesces into something that's 100% fun. Every time I was having fun in Dead Rising, it feels like it was hindered by something else. If I was memorizing the map and using its various tools to my advantage, that was really cool. That was really fun. Dying and then learning, oh, I can save myself or save somebody else from this boss or horde of zombies or whatever using the katana that's just past the juice stand in the entrance plaza is cool. Oh, hi. But then I feel like shit using that knowledge because the survivor AI is so bad and so frustrating that it becomes an anxiety nightmare to tell them where they need to go or to try to lead them anywhere, and it just doesn't feel rewarding at all. By the time I've escorted a survivor, I don't feel happy that I've saved them on some narrative level, and I don't even feel thankful on a gameplay level that I've saved them and gotten a bunch of XP for it. I'm mostly just happy that it's over. Okay. Am I gonna have to babysit you? No! Psychos, on the other hand, are really, really cool. I really, really, really like them. Properly learning to deal with each of them feels really cool. Whether I'm using a tree to block the shots from the convicts and unloading on them with my own gun. Wait, can I? Okay, wait, hold on. Oh? Oh? Or chasing the army veteran around a loop so that I can get katana slashes in on him. Fuck you! There will be bloodshed, motherfucker! Fighting them just feels cool. It feels fun. I like them. And each of them has a pretty unique story too. They're usually just caricatures of an archetype that you can imagine, say, a grocery store manager that's become insane with power and doesn't want anybody to touch his stuff, or an army vet who thinks he's still in the war. But even then, the stories for them are appreciated and often really cool. I even didn't mind the homophobic cop who's a big lady that gropes another small lady while making obscene gestures and making it clear that she might violate her with her her baton. In fact, the lady says something like, "Not again," implying that she's already done it once. Super terrible, aged awfully, and her fight's not even the most interesting psycho fight. I still liked it. I still had fun. I still kind of laughed and went, God, this is so fucked up. It was fun. I like the psychos. That kind of leads me into my next point with this game. The game has a lot of ludonarrative dissonance, and I really hate to use a big game reviewer video essayist word like that, but it does. It has this story that wants to be taken really seriously about capitalism and infinite consumption. It's got all this stuff about how the virus was made by the US government so that they could keep making more beef, and the people that got hurt by it were a third world country that nobody cared about. And because of that, somebody from that third world country, Carlito, is now not only revolting against the government for doing so, but revolting against the idea of consumerism and capitalism and our infinite need to just keep eating and eating. He even calls zombies the perfect Americans because all they ever do is consume and consume and consume.
Hey, aren't zombies great? I mean, all they do is eat and eat and eat, growing in number, just like you good red, white, and blue Americans.
This is all just taken directly from Dawn of the Dead, which is fine, and that means that it wants to be taken really seriously, and at no point does the story ever stop to laugh at itself. It plays it all straight and considers its story really serious. So then it's a bit undermined when I go outside and it's encouraging me to take erotic shots of zombie strippers, or to jump kick the zombies, or to lariat at them, and ultimately the gameplay is really silly and wacky and fun, which is fun, but it undermines the story and makes the story hard to take seriously. Despite the fact I paid attention to all of the story, I don't really feel like the story mattered to me much, and I definitely couldn't get attached to any of the characters, because they were nothing to me. They were meaningless to me. All that mattered was going back and learning the map and killing the psychos and etc., because that's sort of what the game prioritizes. And obviously it doesn't have to have a perfect story, but it's another one of those things that leads the game to me feeling like the bones of a good game. Like, you have a skeleton here that when it's assembled is like 70% a good game. You're just missing some stuff. You're just missing some stuff that makes the game really fun. And it really sucks because I wanted to like this game. And I do like this game, I think. I'm still kind of conflicted on it. There were a lot of times I had fun. There were a lot more times that I didn't have fun. Which leads me to a time that I wasn't having a lot of fun: overtime mode. Overtime mode sucks. It can't be defended. I don't understand how anyone could be happy about overtime mode. It's clearly padding. Half of it you are left in an empty mall with no ability to gather resources from zombies like knives or queens or anything like that that you would have gotten used to gathering from them, because the only enemies are SWAT people with rifles who stun lock you to death and kill you very quickly and are always in groups of 2 or 3. This is on top of the fact that you're asked to do fetch quests which take you around the entire map to get random items that seemingly have no purpose besides a narrative purpose that effectively doesn't matter. There's also some weird guff about a bunch of zombies being stored under the clock tower and Carlito having essentially ticking time bombs of zombie children in every major metropolitan area ready to start the zombie apocalypse at any point. But it doesn't matter because this never gets brought up. It's clear sequel bait, and not even good sequel bait at that. And this is before it leads you into the god-awful sewer section where you're asked to bring Isabel forward through a sewer while holding her hand and holding a queen that makes the zombies not attack her. But there are so many zombies that it effectively is easier to find one with a queen, kill the large group of them, and just keep walking forward with her rather than trying to pull her through. It only even lets you carry her at the last moment, which would have been a lot nicer had it reversed those and made me hold her hand then. And then this leads to the true ending boss fight with a tank, and you're in a jeep on a mounted LMG, and then you have to fist fight Joe Army to death, and then the ending is just text on a screen with a typo even. This is the true ending of the game. This is the canon ending of the game. I realize that Dead Rising 2 and Dead Rising Off the Record never actually canonize an ending, and there are multiple endings, but the achievement that you get for this is called the true ending. This implies that this is the canon ending, the one that leads into the next game. This is atrocious. Not only is the fight with Joe Army complete clickbait bullshit that is meant to be cheesed and takes away your weapons for no good reason. But the ending couldn't even give you a cinematic. It just gives you text on the screen that was so rushed there's a typo in it. I'm not joking. I'll put it on screen right now. There's a typo in it. That's completely absurd. It is not okay for there to be a typo in the true ending of the game that you unlock. It just speaks to quality control laziness and how rushed overtime mode was, while also effectively making it the canon narrative ending to the game that you have to get if you really want to know the whole story. It's just unfortunate. I wanted to like Dead Rising. Everything that I knew about Dead Rising told me that Dead Rising should be my type of game. I should enjoy it. And a lot of the stuff that I did think I would enjoy, I did. All of the map memorization, the boss patterns, the dealing with hordes of zombies, the silly, funny, wacky gameplay, I enjoyed all of that. But between the ludonarrative dissonance, the terrible tacked on true ending overtime mode that is rushed to hell, and just how awful and bad the survivor AI is, making the secondary side objective feel more like a chore than an actual fun thing to do, it just feels so much more like the bare bones of a good game than an actually good game. And that does it. I think if there's ever a video that I'm gonna get canceled for my video game opinions on, this might be it. Dead Rising is beloved to so many people, who knows? But ultimately, if you agree with me, if you disagree with me, I want to hear your opinion, so please leave it below, especially if it's one that disagrees with mine. I like to have discussions about this sort of thing. But until then, this has been Post-Mortem. I'll catch you next Sunday for it. Thanks for watching. Bye.